Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Utilities Department Quarterly Update Board of County Commissioners meeting for July 7th, 2022. Let the record reflect that all commissioners are present, and if you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. We will now go into our public input portion. Anyone wishing to address the board during this portion of the meeting may fill out a card, state your name for the record, and state which agenda item or items you will be addressing. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes max and shall be addressed to the commissioner's body, not to individual members. There isn't any interaction or discussion at this time, and with that, we open it up. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. No one wishing to speak. Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward then. Mr. Flores, any opening comments before we move over to
Sure.
fiscal?
Rick is waiting.
Yep.
Rick is waiting in the wings. Just quarterly update meeting on the utilities department. So it seems like we just had one, but we are back. But I know Mr. Watson and staff, thanks to them, they've got some new info, some new slides to show you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rick. We can get started.
All right, Mr. Archer.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
All right, good afternoon. Rick Arthur, Fiscal Services, and we've got a financial update for you this for the meeting. And of course, you know, we got into the weeds last time with Murray and the rate consultant here, so we're going to keep it a little higher level this time. We brought back some information you've seen before. In fact, you've seen all of this before, so it's just going to be a refresher for you and anybody in the audience or at home that's watching that's not as familiar with all this stuff. It'll be informational for them. Okay, so today we're going to just look at kind of how the cash flows in the utility. We talk about it a lot, but it sometimes gets confusing, so we've got some workflows that we brought here for people just to kind of visualize. Sometimes that helps, especially when we're talking about it all the time, but maybe we don't take a moment to pause and actually explain how that funding works. Additionally, we're going to look at the historic and projected debt levels of the utility. Again, these are graphs that you've seen before. We've pulled them again and updated them, and we'll take a look at those. And then additionally, we're going to talk about the SRF process and what's on the horizon for that, along with what's the latest that we've got from the Peace River. We've got some new updates from that as well. And then the last item is just going to be a refresh on our reimbursement resolution. So just getting started on the utility and how the money flows in the utility. This is just a little cash flow or workflow to kind of show how the money moves within the utility. So there's really two major revenue sources for the utilities, connection fees and user fees. Now connection fees, they go directly into the water and wastewater connection fee funds, and those are restricted just for expansionary projects. Our user fees go into our operations and maintenance fund, and that's where we have a little more discretion. So you can see from that fund, dollars can be allocated to water and wastewater expansion projects, any capital projects, and of course, as you know, we budget an allocation to our R&R fund every year as well. Now, in terms of debt service, it gets even a little more confusing because we're required by our bond covenants to have a debt service sinking fund. And so you can see that this workflow is a little more complicated, and additionally we added in another revenue source, the MSBU assessments, which are not really a utility revenue, but they're an assessment for, as you know, our septic to sewer conversion projects. And those dollars are restricted to those MSBU funds, and generally those projects are paid for using SRF as a financing mechanism, and then those dollars are paid back over a 20-year term. And when those payments are made, they're transferred from the MSBU fund, as you can see by the little arrow pointing to the debt service fund, and then out of the debt service fund, the principal and interest payments are made on an annual basis.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. And those are, but that's a very targeted fund. It's paying back a specific amount of debt for a single project, and when that is paid back, that project is done, that disappears.
Absolutely.
It's not like roads. It's going to go away.
Right, that's correct. That's a totally different one, and that's why I only put it on this one, because I didn't want to confuse anybody that's not familiar with it. But you can also see with our user fee and our connection fees how the flow works there. So everything flows into the funds where they're supposed to go, and again, we have a little more discretion with O&M. A lot of the projects that we do are paid directly out of the funds. They might be a pay-go project where it's a smaller dollar amount, and we can just pay for it as we go. But additional, larger projects might require us to finance it, so we're not putting all that cash out at once. And then if that's the case, this is how the money flows. So we'll budget a transfer in all of these funds. They go into the debt service fund, and then the debt service is actually paid out of the debt service fund.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, and this might be a Hector or Mr. Watson question, but we just talked about a booster tank in South County. Is there a reason to model for some larger projects that are very focused to one area to maybe use that MSBU model to say, okay, what's the total capacity that this will aid in this area? There's current, there's stuff that's about to come online, and there's total future. So obviously you're not going to get the total future stuff until it goes into the ground. So maybe the utility has to cover that part, but gets it back in connection fees. But I'm just thinking, is there a reason to adopt something like that for a piece of hardware or an augmentation to the system that's obviously only going to benefit one small area, and therefore maybe it shouldn't be just put out over every ratepayer? I know that's how we've done it in the past. I'm just bringing it up for conversation because I think as time goes on, there's going to be more focused development in certain areas, and should that really be borne by all the other ratepayers, or should it be borne by those that are really going to derive the benefit from it, just like septic to sewer? So just throwing it out there.
Good question.
Well, I would say fiscally we could do that.
Right, right.
If you
Right, that's what I'm
take
saying.
that
It's definitely an administration
Yeah, I would leave it to
question.
the attorney and to.
But I'm glad you put it on there.
utility.
Thank you.
Okay. So another thing to keep in mind here, and we're not going to cover it today, but probably at our next quarterly meeting, we're going to look at the utility budget. I think we meet in September or October, so it'll be right around budget time, so we'll take a look at that. And when you see that debt service fund, sinking fund, the budget for it, you'll see that it's pretty large. And the reason why is we're required by bond covenants to prepay into that fund. So there's always a reserve balance in there to make sure that we're going to make our payments. So just FYI for when we go through that at our next meeting. Okay, so next we're going to talk about our historic and our projected debt for the utility. These are graphs that you've seen before. We've just pulled them out and updated them with new information. One thing I do want, or a couple things I want to highlight are these are the outstanding balances. So this is the total debt obligation of the utility. It's not the expenditures on a year-to-year basis for payments. Additionally, we're going to look at it from three different perspectives, but the balances on each graph are the same. So from graph to graph, the numbers don't change, but you'll see the colors change depending on how we categorize them. Okay, so up first is the historic and projected debt by financing mechanism. And so the story that this one really tells is you can see the blue trending down. And that is the revenue bonds that we utilize to acquire the utility. And then you see the kind of inversion to the orange and the light orange. The orange is the SRF debt that we're utilizing. And we're utilizing that a lot more because, that's such a much more advantage to us to utilize SRF when we can because of the rates right now. And historically, the rates have even been better than the bond market.
Mr. Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But looking at the graphs here, I don't believe it includes the additional debt that we're going to have to take on for our share of the Peace River.
You are correct. That's not included in here. And if just to get to this is just our system. Now we will have that burden. It will go through our operating expenditures, and I'm going to talk about it a little more later.
It would be interesting for us to see how that graph looks adding our obligation.
In the long term, in this 10-year window, add about $150 million
About
to the
150
last
million?
year.
Okay, very good.
149.2,
There you go.
Approximately, right?
just about.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, but that is correct. That's not in here, so that's a good point. I should have pointed that out too. And the light yellow is. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have somebody else?
That's okay. What happens if SRF goes away?
So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that.
And the other part of this that makes me a little nervous is how quickly that slope increases and how we hit a kind of new absurd normal. So, do we really need to go that high? Is that all about Eastport and reworking the main water expansion?
Yep, and we'll see a little bit about that in some future slides. But yes, you're correct. This is just our large project, and it also includes our MSBUs, because although they're not paid back by our rates or connection fees, they're paid back by the MSBU assessments, and that's the pledged revenue source. They are the utilities debt, so they are included in this graph here. Okay, and the light orange is what we intend to use SRF for, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, what our options may or may not be. But we're going to try, we're going to keep trying to get SRF for each of these projects that come up. All right, so if we look at it then from another perspective, this is by repayment source. And the story that this graph tells really is you can see the blue going down, which are our rate revenues as a repayment source. And that's really paying for the bonds right now for the acquisition of the utility, and then you see it kind of go back up. That's for Eastport and the Burnt Store plant expansions. So as those come back on, or if those projects come on board and the debt comes on, those will be repaid by utility rate revenues. And then the other thing that you notice here is what I talked about earlier. You see that orange bar on the top continues to get larger too. So excuse me, those are our MSBU for our assessments for our septic to sewer conversion projects.
So, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Right. Well, this view of those bars makes me feel better, because now I'm understanding where, you're assessing, but it's for a benefit, and it's not truly utility debt, it's a pass-through.
Right.
And so the blue bars is really where we're at, and that's not so bad.
Right.
Okay.
But to Commissioner Doherty's point, this doesn't include, those bars would go up dramatically if we included Peace River. But yes, that's correct. And then the last perspective, again, this is another way to look at it, is by what do we use those debt proceeds for? And this really tells a story. You can really see, again, those blue bars going down for the acquisition of the utility, and then you see the green, the light, and the dark. Again, that's our plant expansion and our MSBU septic to sewer projects as they take off in the debt that we're utilizing for those projects. All right. Okay, so again, SRF, I put this slide in here. We've used it before, but we talk about it a lot, and I don't know if people really understand sometimes what we're talking about, but the SRF funding is a state revolving fund that is available for infrastructure projects. It's funded by both the state and dollars from the federal government, the EPA, and then they use that to loan out money for projects. One thing I would highlight here, and we put a little footnote down here at the bottom, is it's the difference between it and bonds is it's more of a reimbursement. So you kind of have to put the cash out front and then you get reimbursed, as opposed to a traditional bond or something where you would, get the proceeds ahead of time. And then the funds go back into it as people repay their loans. All right, and then we've got some highlights here on the SRF. This, again, is stuff that you've seen as well. You can see when you're looking, this is the latest, to the right there, the little graph showing the rates. This is the latest rate chart published by SRF, and you can see both the clean water drinking program and the clean water program and the drinking water program are still well below the bond market average rate. But a couple of things to highlight with SRF. So they have $250 million approximately annually for the SRF program. However, there's been a lot of talk that there might be an infusion of federal dollars from I have to always look at this, Build America, Buy America Act. Okay, so we don't really know exactly how much that's going to be or what the effects are going to be. It could affect the caps, and we're going to talk about the segment caps in a minute. But again, we talked about also these loans are typically a 20-year repayment as well. And on this slide, we added for you just because, and we talked about this like a year or two ago, what the caps were, and it was right when it went down. So they'd been floating at like $20 to $25 million a year, and all of a sudden we had a dramatic drop off to 12. So for the last 2 years, our cap has been $12 million. There's been talk both from our consultants and we've heard from our SRF representative that it shouldn't go down. It'll probably go up, but we don't know yet. It's going to be a couple more months before we find out. I hope to have that information for you at our next quarterly meeting.
Who decides that?
Well, I would imagine that would be whichever agency oversees the SRF program. And is that environmental management? Anybody know?
DEP, isn't
Yeah. So the environmental.
EPA is federal, but
Yeah, the Florida. Yeah, Florida Department of Environmental Management. So we'll hear some news from them as they get more information on that program.
Mr. Deutsch?
Yeah, could you give us an idea on the difference, how much we save by going through SRF, how much of an impact it is?
Okay, so one of my analysts just did a competitive analysis between the two for like a $60 million bond versus going through SRF. It wasn't even close. I can't remember off the top of my head what the dollar amounts were. Do you remember what it was, Ben? It was multi-million-dollar savings. Yeah, because not only at the beginning you have like an additional fees up front when you bond, but the interest rates are really what does it. I mean, it's when you're talking about that much money over a long period of time, it's not comparable.
Like a no-brainer.
Yeah,
You don't have a
very,
rough idea. You don't have a number on what the comparison is. I'd just be curious.
I could get it to you. I can't recall off the top of my head.
And we know they're moving.
Yes, yep, and they're moving.
And we can lock in on the SRF, correct?
Right, well, and we're keeping track of what the rates are, but as you saw on the previous slide, those rates are still low. So we'll keep an eye on that as well, but we would continue to see the trend lower than the competitive bond market rates. Okay, there was some other stuff I wanted to hit on here. Okay, so if they do get some infusion, some dollars into this program to increase the cap and increase the funds they have available, we're already there because the dollars have EPA dollars in it. The program is already federalized, so we have certain compliance requirements we have to meet. But we're anticipating with there it is again. Build America, Buy America Act, that there will be additional compliance. We just don't anticipate it being that much of a hurdle, but we're going to have to figure out that as well if this happens. Okay, so, and again, too, the SRF process takes some time. It could take anywhere for a year or two to get through the entire process from application to the point that you can start requesting reimbursements. So we put this slide in here, and I'm not going to go through every, I'm not going to read them all off, but these are the hoops that the utility has to go through. And they've actually they've gotten very good at it. So, and then we put a timeline across the bottom there just so you can kind of see as well, how long that whole process actually can take.
Mr. Doherty?
Yeah, you have your dates in there for the public meetings, Rick. I'm just curious, how much time do you have to give them before they have those scheduled meetings for an application to be reviewed? A month? 2 months?
6 weeks is what I'm hearing.
Month and a half?
Yeah. Yep.
Good.
So it's a time. And we're taking one of the plants, Eastport, in August and Burnt Store in November. So we're going to be taking those for SR, to put in to apply for it coming up this fall.
Thank you.
Okay, so the effect on the cap. You all have seen this graph before, or a variation of it, and we wanted to just kind of show you. I think it was a year or two ago I showed this to you, and I said, hey, we're coming to a crossroads. It's not yet, but we're going to get there, and we need to talk about it. And I want to let you know we're probably a couple months from that, right? We're going to find out what the cap is going to be. And as you can see from this, we've got the two big projects, Eastport and Burnt Store. That's the blue and green that are coming up. and we're applying for SRF. We don't know if we'll get it for both. We don't know what the cap is going to be yet, but if it's what our consultants seem to think in the 25 million range, it looks like it could work as far as being able to get both of those projects approved. But we just don't know yet. What you can see is that red dotted line, which is indicating what the cap level is, that for the last 3 years it's been okay for us, but we do have these big projects on the horizon. We have been talking about this with the Finance Committee. They are aware of this, possible issue that we're going to have. We've also been working with the finance consultants for the Finance Committee. They are developing other options for us to seek if we get to a point where we're not able to utilize the SRF program, especially for these two big projects that are coming up. But this allows you to see how that could possibly work even with Westport in there, depending on what the cap comes back at. But also you can see it at the 12 million, we could probably get one of the plants squeezed in there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With SRF, are you allowed to do a joint application with the municipality?
I don't know.
Because I don't know if the city is utilizing their maximum amount of SRF for what their projects are, and if they're not, and if there's a way that we can apply as a county and then do a joint application as a city, with us being a guarantor, is there a way to maximize that?
We could definitely, do some research and find out.
Go ahead and come up. And please say your name for the record.
Ken Stecker, Utility Engineering. We can ask that question. I don't think they can do that. I think they're very specific with how they arrange everything to set the funds out to specific counties or cities. I mean, we can ask our representative about that, but my initial gut is probably not able to do it.
Yeah, my initial gut is that if we did, and even if they allowed us to work with the city, that they would still cap us at 12 million and not, give us any extra capacity if it stayed at that. But it's worth asking.
Yeah, I mean, you never know.
Right.
Out of the box.
Yeah, we'll definitely ask about it.
There may be a lot of various legal mechanics and things involved in that, but, if they're not using as a municipality, and again, I don't know if they're using it, but if they're entitled and they're not at the cap and it's just sitting there and there's some way to do it, why not look?
What they've explained before is if they get to the end of a cap season and some municipality didn't use it, they may take it back and reallocate it to others that need more money. But I think that'd be the only way we could use other municipalities' money, I would think.
Or maybe there's a joint project that they're looking to do that would benefit the utility as well as the city. I don't know, just kind of thinking about it that way. And on the debt, real quick. So I'm looking at your graph on slide 8. Actually, slide 7, I'm sorry. So this shows the debt increasing up through FY 31. It kind of goes up and then kind of comes down a little bit. Would you say that this slide and this debt gets us through, and all these various projects you have on here for wastewater treatment, all the things that are in the hopper now, does that get us through the next 50 years? I mean, on the big ticket items? I would
have to have Dave answer that.
Or is this debt, does it get us through a 20-year window? Or 30?
So I'm trying to recall what the numbers were exactly of the total debt that we put in the model, but again, that's not all at one given time either. That's over a 20-year period. I want to say it was around 500 million. But again, that's a total for the 20 years, not like a snapshot in time. So this is accounting for a portion of that.
Thank you,
through this 10-year window.
Hey, Ken Stecker again. We will be having our water master plan and our reclaim master plan, and then we're starting the sewer master plan. The current designs and constructions for the wastewater treatment plants are for initial upgrade to a certain population. If the population continues to grow and we need to upgrade more, usually we design 20, 25 years. So we're probably good for that 20, 25 years for sure. If we have increased population stays at this rate, which is, doubtful, but if it does, then come around the 29, 30, we may need to do more upgrades.
Do another outlook,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. So in your best guesstimate right now, this debt will probably get us through the next 20 years,
Yeah, I think. with
assuming the
design-
population is
with
within the
design,
calculations.
your window, yeah.
Okay. Only because, when you look at the utility debt in blue, you see how it goes down. So this line isn't necessarily a line that's going to continually go up. I mean, the debt gets paid off. You have the repayment sources on here on the next graph.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
It can't just keep going up.
yeah, no, I know. I guess sometimes you look at this, you lose sight of, you just see debt and you see the arrow going up. But what you don't see is that this gets us through 2 decades.
Right, and as this growth comes in, we're also pulling in more rates and more, connection
Right.
fees to help pay for all this as well. So that help. I don't know if that's shown. You probably have that shown, but that helps over the years as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And keep in mind, we're looking at this all throughout the year. Every quarter, we're coming back to you and going through this stuff with all of you. We're also updating the model every year, and then every 2 years, we're updating the CNA. So going into this fall and probably in January, I think is around when we do the CNA. So probably looking at February, we bring the CNA, the 20-year CNA, back to the board for a review. So at that point, you'll see the utilities, updated CNA with the 20-year picture there too. So it will go on beyond this window that you're seeing here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we're looking at the caps. And then, so here's our current outstanding SRF loans. So you can see we've got a total of about $86 million there already in SRF. So we've done a good job of utilizing that program. We continue to we would like to continue to utilize that program as much as we can, obviously because of the cost savings with the lower interest rates. Here's what's in the pipeline. So on that very first slide of the debt that we're looking at, that light orange, that's the future SRF that we would like to utilize SRF for. That's this list of projects here. And of course, there's a lot there. So there's $219 million on top of the, 149.2 from Peace River that's not included in here. So we've got quite a bit of projects, and we will continue to utilize them. I'm sure we won't be able to utilize SRF for all of these. We'll have to see how it shakes out. But we are in talks with the Finance Committee. They're aware of the possible issue that we might have the need to find other financing mechanisms, and they are looking at alternatives for us. Okay, so updates on Peace River. So we've kind of already talked about this, but what I wanted to highlight are the top 2 items on the left and the top one on the right. The items that are highlighted in yellow are the Peace River facility expansion and Reservoir 3. That's roughly $106 million if my math is right. Those are going to go out. The Peace River Water Authority is going to take those out for financing or bond issuance together. So those items are going to come together, and they have told us to expect it to, start to be allocated to us in fiscal year 24. So we don't expect to have any impacts of that on the budget next year, but starting in 24, we're going to have those impacts start. Now, it's not, I wouldn't imagine that it's going to be all of the debt service all at once. It's going to, come in time as they complete the construction and dependent on how much they borrow initially. But then on top of that, we've got another $36.5 million for Phase 2B. And that one's also going to be starting shortly within the next few fiscal years. So we're going to have all of these hitting our utility budget in the near future. And like you said, it's $150 million worth of debt. My understanding is that's a little bit more than what we paid to acquire the utility. So it's a lot of debt.
A lot.
Yeah.
Mr. Doherty?
Thank you, sir. Obviously, Phase 2B, the local share is on us because it's going through Charlotte County. We've talked about that previously. I'm curious, Hector, on the $82.4 million, and also when you cross the street over there and look over there at the Peace River expansion, which is the plant expansion and the intake structures and all that, what percentage allocation are they working with on that? Is it our current allocation percentage, or is it based on the 20-year projections? If you recall, we grab 12, I think it's like 12 million of the 18 million in the expansion. So are they using the new percentages, or are they using the current percentages? That's important to ascertain.
I'm not sure, but we can find out. I don't know if
In your meetings with the management, yeah.
Yep.
It's Ken Stecker again. In our latest meetings, our allocations for the upgrades was about 11.45 million that they were going to allocate towards Charlotte County out of that upgrade.
Of the 18 million plant expansion, we were 11.
11.
I was guessing it was about 12, and that has a significant percentage, because right now we're at 16.1 million. It goes up to 27 something, if I recall, Bill. And so I'm just curious as to how that factors in the percentages for Sarasota County, Charlotte County, DeSoto County, and Manatee County.
We had our meeting with them to go over it. We were the first meeting. They got to meet with all the other members as well to determine what their future needs are. If their future needs are more, then we may lose some of that 11 if they need to allocate, spread it out more. Based on their current information, that was the number they were able to give us.
If you recall, Mr. Chairman, I have asked administration I questioned that amount, comparing it to Sarasota County's increase. Their request for the next 20 years was less, but they have the Carlton plant. We're dependent on Peace River. So I don't know. I'd like to understand how that all shook out, because they're growing just as fast as we are, but they have another supply source. Thank you, sir.
And I'll be able to get you the information shortly on how we came up with this number. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sure it's based on the allocation. I'm not sure which one it is, current or future. Okay. And then the last thing is just I want to remind you that 2 years ago we did a reimbursement resolution. This allows us to protect ourselves if we decide to do a project and start working on it before we take out debt. We're able to, if at some point in the future we decide we want to go ahead and proceed with debt and we want to reimburse construction costs that we've already incurred, we can go back and do so, but we need to have this reimbursement resolution in place. We have one currently. It's just out of date. It's 2 years old. Scopes changed. New projects have come on board. The Finance Committee and the finance consultants have recommended that we refresh it. So we're going to bring this back to you at a regular board meeting in the near future. So just want to give you a heads up. This will be coming. All right. That's all I had today.
Any other questions? All right, Rick, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to Dave.
Mr. Chair, so am I correct in assuming that the outstanding debt added to the potential SRF loans, that's over 300 million?
It will be, yeah. That's not counting the Peace River stuff.
That's not right. We haven't gotten there yet.
I'm just
I know. Keeping it in perspective.
in perspective. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Watson.
Good afternoon. Dave Watson, Interim Director, Charlotte County Utilities. Going to be going over our quarterly update. You're going to see some familiar slides. You're going to see some new slides. So we'll get started here. So we're going to be hitting our normal key performance index. I'm going to talk a little bit about the existing Babcock Ranch permit. I know there's been some questions that came up about that. And then some utility initiatives that we're taking on over the next next year. So we'll start with the key performance indicators. So this is our normal purchases from the Water Authority. What you can see is we are running a few million gallons a day above what we did last year. The interesting part is really at the end of that chart where you see the drop off between April and May, going back more to what we saw before COVID, with people leaving in April and then getting into our dry season routine in May. And this is pretty much mirrored again with our burnt store system as well. You get that drop off between April and May going down to more normal flows. But both systems are running about the same amount, a couple million gallons a day above where we were last year due to growth. Reclaimed, again, we had a little bit of a drop in May. We're coming back online pretty much with where we should be, but the reclaim has been pretty consistent. We're continually putting it out from Eastport and Westport. There are our primary locations, and Rotunda gets some in there too. So this is a new chart. What this is showing is our monthly capacities at each plant. This is an average capacity based on the capabilities of the plant. Each plant is broken out at the bottom on their max capacity. And if you remember, a couple weeks ago, we had a significant rainstorm. I believe we had over 7 inches of rain in a short period of time. So Eastport's capacity is 6 million gallons a day. At one point, the flow rate was equivalent to 12 million gallons a day going into the plant. So it had some challenges with our operators and with our system as well. But it gives you an idea of why we're going with our expansions. Both all of them, Burnt Store, Eastport, and upcoming Westport with the study.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So, but it looks like, am I reading this wrong? It looks like our percentages are going down.
That's just based on dry season versus wet season. So this is monthly. This is not yearly.
Right, so we're seeing 82, like, let's go back to October 2020 of 21 for Eastport, 82% of the water is being reclaimed?
No, this is treated. This is treated.
So you've been able to treat 82% of the water, whereas?
So it's not the amount treated, this is the capacity of the plant. So in October, our plant was running at 82% of its 100% capacity.
Right, and now as time has gone on, we're at less and less. So even through season, we were going lower.
The flow dropped some, yeah. October and even into November were pretty heavy rain months. And that's why you saw that drop. You're going to see the percentages probably rising in June, July, and August again, going into the rainy season as well.
So what are you reclaiming stormwater, or is that contaminating the septic?
No, stormwater is septic.
Right.
Or stormwater is separate, I'm sorry. What we do get is I&I coming into the system, mostly from the gravity systems that we have throughout, and some of those date back into the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
I&I?
Inflow and infiltration.
What is it?
Inflow and infiltration.
Flow and infiltration, okay.
So some of it seeps in, some of it flows in through manhole covers, things like that.
I mean, is that going to get better as we reline some of those older pipes, or?
Yes, that is actually going to tie in with our CMON program in identifying areas that we should prioritize going in and working towards rehabbing those locations.
Right, because I mean, we're treating water we don't have to treat. If you keep it out, it will naturally go other places. It's pre-contaminated. Once it gets into our system, it now becomes additional contaminated water.
The CMON program, and we'll be touching on that, but that works all-encompassing. It's going to be touching on how much water goes in through I&I. It talks about our best practices that we should be looking at. Actually, the last presentation on the sewer ordinance update actually ties in with that as well, with new requirements that the state's put on it as well.
Okay, in a perfect world, which doesn't exist, if people were using reuse water to water their lawns and do things where that water after treatment would be disappearing, which we want it to. We don't want that water back. We actually want it to go back into the environment where it came from. And if you had, let's use Burnt Store as an example, because those are all brand-new pipes. So you should have close to 95, 98% efficiency with, whatever gets put back into the system for in sewer to come back to be treated. You should just have the effluent coming in. You shouldn't have any other additives, right?
Burnt Store is a lower I&I rate, yes.
Okay. So in theory, what should that be? If you're putting out, 100,000 gallons of water to an area of houses, how much, and it doesn't get put out on the lawns, it's just getting used and put back into the drains, how much of that should you be getting back? Because I'm looking at 60% versus 80% versus, so I'm trying to understand, that's capacity of what you can treat, but I really want to understand how efficient are our systems, how efficient should they be? And again, I'll focus on Burnt Store because we're going to be upgrading that plant. All the stuff under the roads there is brand new. I mean, we have the best chance of having an ideal system.
Part of it is reflected in our rates when someone has water and wastewater. The wastewater rate is a percentage of the water rate because we don't get it all back. That water may be used for landscaping, it may be used in a pool, whatever. I don't know the exact percentage.
In a perfect world, yes, all the pipes underground are connected and no I&I is coming back. But underground, the ground shifts. As it gets wet, it gets dry, it shifts. It's going to pull joints out a little bit here and there. A good system, you're probably still going to have 5 to 10% I&I coming in. We try to minimize that with the CMOM. They'll go out, and with the sewer master plan, we'll get a heat map of areas where, hey, this is your really bad areas I&I, and if you can fix these areas, focus your money in these areas, then you'll reduce your I&I, more bang for your buck in reducing your I&I. And I don't think you'll ever be able to get rid of all your I&I, but the CMOM and the sewer master plan will give us those avenues to reduce it as much as possible, and then we will be treating mostly the wastewater coming in and not having to deal with the amount of flows we get during these high rain, these intense rains that we have down here.
Right. And again, I would submit that our system is brand new underneath Burnt Store Road, so we shouldn't be losing a whole lot there. Maybe some of the systems within the neighborhoods are pretty old, or there's some failures there, and we can't trace all that down, and there's going to be problems. But that would be our most ideal situation. I just would like to understand, if we put out 1,000 gallons or 1,000,000 gallons of water to an area, how much should we be getting back, and how do we track that? Are we tracking that? I mean, I agree. They're filling their pools, doing other things with it, so it's hard to tell. But there's got to be a statistical number that we know we're doing well, or we're doing really well, or we're doing very poorly.
So we can certainly do that. We know what we put out of our water plant down in Burnt Store on a daily basis. We know what we bring back on a daily basis to the wastewater plant.
And what is that, 60% of what you put out? Because that's not these numbers.
No, I don't know that number offhand.
All right. I'd like to know, because and then ultimately, so there's, X goes out, a fraction of X comes back, and then a fraction of that goes back out as reuse. And I think I'd like to understand what that proportion looks like for each one of our facilities.
Yes, Burnt Store is probably going to be the easiest one. Our reuse there is very minimal.
Right.
So it's really, water and wastewater only.
Well, when we get to that, I have individuals in the area, and definitely south of the county line, that really want reuse. And we should have lots, because you're injecting a bunch of it into the ground.
So with Burnt Store, the best solution or best answer I can give you right now, we can put reuse out, but we can only put it out while the plant is manned, which is only for an 8-hour period a day. This system is currently not pressurized, so basically during that 8-hour period, what's coming in is what can go out. So our ability to provide reuse down there is very minimal right now until we get the plant expansion done. Part of the plant expansion is putting in a full reuse system so that we'll have storage available and can pressurize the whole system, just like we've done in Mid and West County now.
What's the timetable on that?
25, I believe,
2 to 3.
roughly, a couple years.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Doherty.
Thank you, sir. Do all these plants participate in the distribution of reclaim? Rotunda?
Yes, yes. all
Westport?
three.
Now, we're upgrading, we approved the upgrading to advanced wastewater treatment for Burnt Store and Eastport.
Yes.
Because we have that state law that's coming down on us, what, in about 2 years?
Yes, well, I think
Maybe
we
3.
have to have our solution by 25, but the law takes effect 31.
Otherwise, we won't be able to distribute that reclaim to, could possibly get to surface waters.
Yeah,
gotta
we
stop.
are already seeing issues with that coming from the DEP. And when we get our AWT in place, all those issues with DEP will go away.
Will go away. So we're going to be okay with Burnt Store and Eastport, because we've got those in line now. Next one is Westport, and we'll go to advanced wastewater with Westport. What's the plan for Rotunda then?
Part of the sewer master plan is doing evaluation. Rotunda and Westport are right next to each other.
Right.
So it's an evaluation to see if it'd be more cost effective to decommission Rotunda and
Okay.
send all flows to Westport to reduce, our.
Let's do some plumbing
operations-
changes to make
operation.
the distribution out of Westport. Yeah.
Right, and to kind of handle all wastewater at Westport, but that's got to be evaluated because decommissioning a plant is costs a lot of money too, so.
But can that be done by the time that state law goes into effect?
Yes.
Is currently, I think the Westport is planned, and I have it on slide, but I think it's 28 is the final construction. I think it's 26 to 28 is construction timeframe on Westport.
The state, though, I thought we just said 25.
So we have to have a solution.
Solution by 25?
But
When does the hammer come down?
It's 31?
I think it's 31.
Okay. I would appreciate, Hector, just an update on that timeline from the state, because that becomes a big deal on how we manage these utilities. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner DeSalle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the costs associated with treating I&I water that gets in the system versus lining the pipes, I mean, is that what you calculate? Like, because obviously over time, it's probably cheaper to reline the pipes and keep treating water. And I assume you can isolate through maybe pump activation at the lift stations. I don't know if those are metered, but you can probably tell when there's an extraordinary amount of pump activation. You can basically triangulate where most of the water's coming in and target those areas, because there's probably obviously big costs associated with treating rainwater.
I mean, we do as much as we can from the operations side right now. Where we can, we put liners in the manholes to minimize the flow that can go through the manholes. But, some of the lines, especially the old asbestos concrete pipe that we have in a number of areas with our collection system, they're porous. You can put a probe rod right through them. So there's a decent amount of, of I&I that's coming in through those systems. We know it. We only have the capability of doing so much each year. So we do prioritize. We are going out and we're doing what we can on an annual basis. And I&I, we're working on that overall plan that tie in with the sewer master plan.
It'd be interesting to see how much we can probably take the gallons from the rainfall that you can guesstimate and apply the treatment costs and say, hey, it's costing us so much money per month to treat this water. I know you can't get a perfect system, because even the best system, there's still a 5%, I guess from what I'm hearing, infiltration rate. But it's just interesting. And now on the vacuum systems, are you able to determine if you're getting less I&I through the new vacuum systems we're installing? Because that's a different technology.
So, Ken, you want to answer? You want me?
Obviously, Ken Stecker again. Obviously, because they're all so new, then they definitely are less I&I, but the technology itself tends to lead, I think, to less I&I as well. They're smaller pipes. They're not larger pipes, so the amount of flow they can get through them would be less. And they keep a constant vacuum going. So I think, yeah, you'll definitely see less I&I, a lot of it mainly because we only put them in the last 5 years or so, but they're smaller pipes, but eventually they do get to a lift station, but that's all PVC. That should not be any of the AC pipe and all that. So yeah, definitely newer systems should be better.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting as we get the data in now that we've adopted vacuum systems as part of our, we have hybrid systems where we have vacuum, low pressure, and then gravity. But, if there's a huge cost savings over time, it might be another positive result of going to the vacuum system. We're not, moving forward, we're not treating all this I&I water to the tune of who knows how much a month.
And definitely, if you talk to the techs out in the field, they'll tell you where the bad parts of the system are. Because they have to have pumper trucks out there when you have a big rain, to cover it. So.
Yeah, maybe offline, I'd like to get a calculation on how much it's costing us. I'd like to get my arms around that number. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Deutsch.
Thank you. I noticed that our capacity sort of ranges from 50 to 82%. In terms of idea, what's acceptable and what's your goal, the ultimate goal? Where would you be comfortable being?
So here's what I can tell you from a DEP standpoint. Once a plant hits 50% capacity over a 3-month period, then we're required to do a capacity analysis on that plant annually to determine what that plant's going to be able to handle and to ensure that we're planning for the future. Once that plant hits 75% capacity on a 3-month running total, then you are required to be in design for an expansion of that plant. So we go by the state requirements on each one. With the amount of growth that we have, where I'm comfortable probably isn't on that chart.
What are you looking for, 75, 80%?
Honestly, I don't like to go more than 75%, but, when we have rain, 50% capacity may be the max we can handle. Again, it really comes down to the plant and what's going into it. So each one is a little different. Eastport and Westport are very similar from a process standpoint. Rotunda is totally different, and Burnt Store is a conglomeration of old package plants. So each one has a different
personality. They're all
yes, exactly. So they all function and perform a little bit differently, but they're all under that same.
But your goal is you'd like to have them cross the board around 75%. You'd be happy with that
as a max. Ideally, we're going to be running on a normal day under 50%, so we don't have to do a capacity analysis of DEP every year.
And rainy season's a factor as well, obviously. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. So some info on our water distribution system. Our water main breaks, that first column, repaired services is a second, and then on a monthly basis, the total customers that have been affected by water main breaks is that third column. I guess what you can really see is that when we go from the dry season into the wet season, we have ground movement, and that is what really causes a number of our water main breaks, the larger ones. Again, when we have more breaks, more customers are affected. So our service crews, for the most part, they're handling breaks on a daily basis, whether it's services or whether it's main breaks. Wastewater collections, again, the first column is our SSOs, and then I wanted to show, based on the SSOs, which ones are through contractor error, and then the total hours of after calls hours that we have on our LPS system. So each one of those is kind of a significant item. Obviously, DEP covers the SSOs, but we do have quite a few of them are due to contractors. Some have been our contractors. A large number of them have been underground contractors that are drilling in for the cable companies, for FPL, all those entities. So this is our breakdown of our new customers. We've been consistent pretty much. We're finishing up in El Jobim. That number is down in May. It'll be pretty much in that same ballpark probably for June, and we'll be finishing up there. The new sewer customers have been 115 in May, about 158 in June, in May. And just to give you an idea, right now we have 472 services in queue for water that have been requested. So that's kind of an ongoing battle. Some basics for our engineering. I know Ken's going to touch on the projects, but our line locators are actually in engineering. So to give you an idea, they're running between about 1,900 and 2,300 locates a month. We currently have 4 line locators. So to give it a breakdown, they're doing give or take about one locate every 15 minutes during the course of the day. And then our active professional contracts, that number's 36 right now. Again, that is all of our professional contracts across the board with the utility. Most of them are with various design projects.
You hold on just 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, slide 9. Low-pressure sewer calls after hours. That's like 3 to 4 calls a day after hours. Am I reading that right?
Yes, our guys are pretty busy.
Okay, so it's interesting because literally I had a meeting with a constituent out on the islands, barrier islands, who may be part of that proposed environmental utilities expansion. And the question was actually asked because he's proposing low-pressure systems. So if you're out on the island and you have a low-pressure system and you had after-hour calls at this rate, assuming it would apply out there, how's that going to be serviced? Because we have our own service crews that do it here.
it's like the last type of sewer we would want to put in. Am I not correct?
Yeah, no, well, yeah. It's the least desirable, I
Least
think.
desirable.
Yeah, but it,
From a maintenance standpoint, yes.
yes.
And the after-hours calls, they may range from the light going off. It may be a float that's bad. It may have been a bad pump. It may be a breaker that's blown. Could be any number of things. Many of them are quick fixes. But, it's a consistent changeover of pumps. We have pumps in there. They basically burn out within 5 years. So every system, you're changing those pumps over approximately once every 5 years.
Okay, because it's crazy. I literally, it was maybe 2 hours ago, I had a meeting talking about this. My own experiences, and I've had a commercial application for this with a dual pumps, though. I had a redundant system. In a commercial application, I went for over a decade without replacing, some of them are like 3/4 of a horse pump, grinder pumps. They would go forever and not need replacing. And sometimes you can put one out of the box and it's dead in a month. But you're saying the pumps are going 5 years in a normal residential application.
Yeah, an average.
That's interesting. Okay, well, I guess I'm a little more concerned now because the question was brought up, how does all this get serviced? If you're in that situation on a barrier island.
I can't answer that one.
Yeah. Either the utility then would need to have a guy on call, because if this is kind of standard for low-pressure systems, they'd understand that going in.
Yes, we have four guys on call regularly from each division within our wastewater collections. So every night, based on what problem might be, we have 4 on call, not counting water distribution.
Okay. And I know we had trouble with the vacuum system. I say trouble. You were tweaking the system, calibrating, because it was a new system. How are we doing on service calls for all this new vacuum system we've been expanding? Have we got it down now, or are those systems requiring similar maintenance calls for problems with the valves?
The vacuum system, I've got it too.
Charlie.
Sorry, yeah, you're going to have to come up and give us your name and go on camera.
Charlie Ryan, wastewater collection with utilities. Rob Jones has been the foreman over that system, and he's been tweaking it, like you said. And he's still got a few bugs he's working out in the Skylark area. El Jabini hasn't had very few problems out there. In Harbor Boulevard area, very few problems there. It's just most of it, what he's finding is the first application with the vacuum was in Skylark area. And that system, they completely revamped it since they've done these other ones. And there was connections in there that they made with old couplings that we've had to go in and replace these couplings. So the new systems don't have it, but he's in the process of getting everything worked out over there, and it's working good.
Okay. Yeah, when we make these decisions with these systems, it's interesting to look at the data. And in the long run on the maintenance costs, it's like anything else. What are the long-term maintenance costs? Maybe cheaper up front, but at the end of the day, after 10 years of maintenance calls, you could have went with the upgraded system. And the ratepayers ultimately pay because it's passed through in the rates.
And when they do the financial analysis on each type, especially when we're going into the S2S, they do look at that. The maintenance costs over a 20-year period are factored in.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
So business services. So we have 3 columns here dating back to October. Our availability requests and our service connection requests. Again, they kind of mirror what's going on with community development. You can see we're in the 400 to 500 requests a month range for availability. Then our service requests go up and down between close to 300 up to 500. Our account turnoffs, those are our shutoffs on a monthly basis. Pretty consistent in that 350 to 500 range, depending on what time of year. October is just a heavier month. Again, we got people coming back for whatever reason they haven't paid their bill. The majority of those are paid up and they're just turned over.
Okay, hang on. Commissioner Deutsch.
Thank you. On new service requests, how much ahead do you like to have the contractor call you, or the homeowner? And what's the waiting period on an average basis with, the explosion we're going through?
So on the actual request, most of the requests come in from a potential homeowner, a real estate agent, anybody like that that's looking to purchase a property. Is sewer water available? They're probably the majority, but we turn those around within a couple days, I believe. 3 days? 3 days.
Not the hookup, but
No.
the paperwork.
Is it available?
Yeah, what I'm more curious about, because I know we've, over the past 10, 12 years, we've gotten very efficient with the paperwork. But from the time that someone tells you, hey, we've got a house going in here, we're at such and such a point, do they call you a month ahead, 2 months ahead, 3 months ahead? And if they call on the first of the month and they had their paperwork in, how much time is it before, with the numbers you're dealing with, that you can hook them up?
So to give you the short answer, they call quite a bit ahead, but they often don't pay ahead. So
I understand.
Taking that into consideration.
Well, it's when they pay that it kicks
Right.
in. That's where the clock starts in my mind.
So we've kind of modified the way we do things a little bit, partly because of the number of requests that we've had that actually, developers and homeowners are coming in and wanting service. So right now, that 470 some in queue, we're talking about 90 days right now. That's about as high as I have wanted to go.
So if I may interject, so if I'm building a new home, or in the process of either myself or with a contractor or whatever, and it's the 1st of January, and I know I'm going to be ready for my water hookup the 1st of March, I should pay my money in January and get on the list so I'm in the queue and I would get called as close to that as possible?
Yes. So once you pay, okay, you're obviously in the queue.
That puts you in the queue.
Now, what we've done in addition to that, because we've had so many, we will go out and we will ensure that that service is in once you have the slab poured. Okay. Previously, we had developers calling up, right after they paid, like, we want the service put in, and the construction doesn't start for months. So we've gotten to that point. Our crew leader out there, he works with the developers he's in contact with them daily, making sure that, once they have that slab there, our crew is going to be scheduled to go out there and get it in.
So you do have a percentage that pay early. That surprises me because most of the contacts that I've had with folks are when they can't. They're told it's going to be a while, and and it turns out that the fee hasn't been paid. And and I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. I don't know whose responsibility it is to come up with that money, but if the person building the home has given it to the contractor, I would think that the contractor can pass that on to make sure he gets in the queue because it's more efficient for him time-wise. Do you have any problems with that, or do you think it's working its way through, or what are your comments on that?
So we have tightened the process up. I guess that's the best way to put it. With the growth that we've experienced, we certainly weren't as lenient or as open. We would get a request 3 years ago, say. We would get a request and we wouldn't get paid for a while. They would want to be on the list to get the money, to get their service, but we wouldn't get paid. So we're at the point now we are getting paid, in order to get onto the queue.
So it's moving much more efficiently.
Yeah, yeah, and, as I said, we do work with the developers. We're familiar and in tune with where they are in their process and when they're going to be.
And obviously I see both sides of it, and, the contractor isn't paid till the house is finished, but the reality is, if you're not in the queue till that money gets to you, and if everyone understands it, I think they're going to be saying, hey, if I'm going to be ready in 2 months and it's a 3-month wait, I better get my money in right away, and if I'll be ready in a month, and if I get in 4 or 5 weeks ahead, I should be in good shape. But you don't have too many problems with that anymore.
We haven't. We communicate pretty well with the developers and the contractors, so it's not surprising. If they're wanting service, we work with them to get it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to add to it. They are great to work with as long as you do your part and not wait. Because what happens with some people is they don't want to spend that money. They don't want to, because of how their structures are set up. And I can tell you that I like mine paid at permitting application. I want water on the job site for block. I'd like it there for the slab when it's poured, but I'll take it at block. So I want to make sure they know when the slab's poured, so my guys have the order. Make sure you call utilities and let them know if they're out in the area, they can drive by and verify slab's poured.
Yeah, Bill, most of the complaints and problems I have, after a little investigation, the person responsible for paying has been a little bit slow on the draw. And then, and I try to explain to him, you got to pay for it, and that puts you in the queue, and then you're in pretty good shape. So, but again, with prices going up and juggling everything so you get your CO, I know it's a problem on both sides. I just was wondering how big a problem or a challenge it was. Thanks.
Everybody has to plan further in advance than we ever had before. But again, we haven't had any issues because we pay early. And then we're not, if you're proactive, you're not waiting for a CO. And that's the big thing. If I don't get it at block, I don't get it at block, but the goal is to make sure that we're not calling them every day trying to get a CO, because that doesn't help them. It takes them away from what they need.
The bottom line of what bothers me, if we're doing our best to be efficient and operate at the highest level possible and cooperate with the people, who are building the houses, and what happens, and I'm sure you know this, Bill, but what happens is, well, they turn around and say, well, it's the county's fault they're making us wait 3 months. And, we can mess up a soup sandwich on any given day, but the reality is when we're doing the best we can and we're trying hard and we've got parameters set up and we're not doing anything wrong because someone was late in paying their fee, it frustrates and bothers me when we get blamed for it.
Yeah, they do the same thing with permitting, and then you go in and look at a permit application and realize they haven't responded to the rejections. So, back to you, sir.
Right.
It's true.
So, our customer support center was opened on June 6th. It's a picture of the front entrance there. First week, we served 189 customers. I believe in June, we served about approximately 500 customers for the remainder of the month. So that is in effect. We have 2 CSRs up there, full-time from 8:30 to 4:30. Our customer support information. So this is broken down between calls, emails, and our speed of answer. You can see, very happy, the speed of answer has actually come down. Our staff is now trained, and we're under 3 minutes for our speed of answer now with our CSRs. They're handling, varying per month, but anywhere between about 6,500 and 11,000 calls a month. That varies, again, depending on the time of year. And then our emails pretty much are a little over 2,000, between 2,000 and 2,500 a month. Our PR section. So just broke that down for the outreach events that we do, facility tours, our public records requests, and then the app requests, which is our public stuff. How many of those things that we are answering on a monthly basis and what we're trying to do. Our employee performance measures. So we broke this down based on our turnover, our vacant positions, our overtime, And then we do have a line item there for contracted labor hours. So I'll start with that. We have going out, we do have a contract, I believe it's in place at this point, but we haven't utilized it yet, for engineering inspection services. We are actually looking at potential contracted for wastewater plant operators. We're pushing those off because they are painful as far as the cost. But we obviously, based on our vacant positions, we're having some difficulties in finding people, particularly licensed ones.
Good.
Turn this on, be better. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What are we doing about reaching out to our local educational system, CTC?
Can I put that on hold for 1 minute?
Sure.
Because I have another slide on that.
All right, good. Because we need to create our own workforce.
Questions on this one?
No, but I will leave you in the queue as well.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Oh, good, because I wanted to ask them on this, too.
to give you an idea, I think it's actually on one of our incentives later on.
Okay.
But we have reached out to the VOTEC. We met with them, the director there. We are going to be working with them to implement a wastewater collection training program beginning in January. The utility will be putting up to 8 internship programs following that program, following the students' completion. So basically the VOTEC will be supplying the education side. It'll be evening courses. They'll supply the instructors, and then based on the grades of the students and the attendance record, they'll be potentially offered positions to intern with the utility. So we have up to 2 positions per plant that we can offer.
And listen, I think that's wonderful, and I think you should set this thing up, and if it works out and it's a positive effort, don't stop. If you only need 10 and you create 30 a year, good. There's plenty of other utilities up and down the coast that will love the fact that we're creating folks that can actually fill those positions. Let's become the educational and training ground for not only your workforce, but for everybody else. Let's become experts at creating these positions, and it can be a small school, a small, pod, but at least we know we will always have a workforce, and some of our neighbors will as well. These jobs aren't going away. We're expanding these plants everywhere. We're an expansion state, so there's no reason why we can't do more for our neighbors, and it's obviously going to help us too. So I'm really pleased that you picked up the baton and you realized how important it is. They're not coming here. We got to create them.
So to kind of build on that, we have reached out to Englewood Water District, City of Northport, and the City of Punta Gorda. They are all favorable for the program. They're supportive of it, and we'll see where it goes and how many students we get in January.
That was great.
We did talk to the school also about potentially looking at a water treatment plant course, but let's see how the wastewater goes first.
Thank you.
Babcock Ranch permit. So these are the basics of the existing permit. It expires in December of 31. The permit is for secondary public water supply. The allocation is 372 million gallons a month. Basically, it's 1 million gallons a day, roughly. The max month is based on 3 times that at 93 million gallons per month. There are 3 wells out there. There are 3 14-inch wells, all 900 feet deep, that have a capacity of about 1,500 gallons a minute. And the wells are permitted solely for Charlotte County.
So if I can, Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'll put myself back in the queue.
Good.
But, what I think is interesting, that equates to 3 million gallons a day. And I think that might be the delta.
Well, yeah, a million gallons a day. But yes, the max month is 3 million. So it's 317 million gallons per year.
Oh, I see. You can't exceed 3 million gallons in a month.
Yes.
That's your max-
So
that's your max
Your
month.
max is 93 million gallons in a month.
Right. Or 3
3
million gallons a day for a month's time,
Right.
but it cannot exceed the 300 and whatever per
Over the
year.
course of the year.
Okay. We need more.
So part of that discussion, I guess, when Babcock Ranch came into
That
effect,
was my inside voice coming.
there is documentation about the district anticipating that we would potentially ask for more, up to 10 million gallons a day. So that is sitting out there, but that's when we're ready to proceed with it.
So the two growth,
Just to add to that, this initial permit was for emergency use, but there's legislation tied to it to convert, to apply to make it a production permit for up to 10 to 15 million gallons.
per day?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. So, when I look at the map, I mean, obviously, we've been talking forever about Burnstore Road, because now we've created the road and the infrastructure for water and sewer, and, it's gonna explode. Well, Vermont's gonna be the same way. And the logic 10 years ago even to say, well, we're gonna, tap those wells and we'll bring that water for millions of dollars to that pipeline under Vermont Road and bring it all the way into town, that doesn't make as much sense as, hey, that will allow for development all along Burnstore Road, and presumably more toward 31, it's a little further out of town, but that's going to be closer to the water source. So it's a way of getting that pipeline and even backfilling, but allowing for, because the salinity out there is terrible. So for folks to really, unless they want to put in a large development with package plants and whatnot, I mean, that makes the most sense, is get that water back in for redundancy's sake, but it should be feeding development all along the way. And then I've seen, I guess, the presentation that got pulled, but it was a good presentation from Jones Edmonds about where the pipelines were going and how it was going to tie into the South County feed, because at the end of the day, it's great that we're part of the Water Authority, and it's great that we're planning out for, the additional reservoir and the additional capacity, and that's going to be our, 60-70% of our water supply. We have to create our own. What we've done at Burnstore, what the city has done with their RO plant, what we potentially will definitely do with these wells, is we've got to bring in more of our own supply. So we can't let this permit die. We have to keep it on our strategic plan, and we have to, look toward enticing the developers to say, hey, if you're going to go out that road, look, we will work with you. We need to have a reason to bring that water back. I don't know when that's going to happen, but there'll come a moment in time in the future where it all kind of comes together and it makes sense for us to start down that road. Plus, we're talking about maybe improving Vermont Road. So that's going to be the next sort of frontier for us. But I'm glad you put the slides in. Thank you.
But when we get to the Water Master Plan, obviously that is discussed in there, and I think from the Water Master Plan, it's probably going to spur some additional studies regarding the Babcock Ranch wells.
Thank you.
Mr. Doherty.
Thank you, sir. I'd appreciate getting a copy of that permit. I'd like to know what aquifer they permitted. I don't know if that was the Floridan or whether they went down intermediate some level. That 900 feet, I'm not sure which aquifer and what the water quality was. That would be along the lines of what you're talking about. What kind of treatment would we have to contemplate for depending on the quality of that water? So I'm just curious. The permit should sort of identify some of that stuff.
And we do sampling out there quarterly, I believe it is.
What's it look
It's
like?
pretty consistent.
Is it good water?
I couldn't tell you. I know we do. It's a regulatory thing.
Go ahead and drink it, right?
It's a regulatory thing, and I believe the sampling is mostly for groundwater elevation.
Oh, okay. But I appreciate Hector getting a copy of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sale.
Hey, Mr. Chair. There was a comment about legislation regarding the wells out at Babcock Ranch and transitioning from emergency wells to non-emergency wells. That's not on our legislative agenda. Can you give me a little?
No, it's something tied to the permit when this was originally created, and I'm still trying to research it, and so I can understand it as well. So I understand. So when we do come forward with the water master plan and source of supply, I'll have a clear understanding on how that converts from the emergency type permit into a production allocation type
Yeah,
situation.
the reason I bring it up now is, we're going through the process of finalizing and discussing our state and federal legislative agenda. And if there's something we need to know, maybe for this session, maybe we need to get those details and have a board discussion if we need to adopt something as a support item or as a legislative priority, if that's going to help the utility and water availability. If there's something we can do, we need to have that discussion. So that's why when you said there's legislation, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't remember having that as part of our,
No, it's nothing that we've talked about yet. It's just something I need to research because when researching this permit, I was always told that we had 10 to 15, but the permit doesn't say that. It says it's an emergency, so I got to research farther to find where that 10 to 15.
well, Hector, if you can maybe fast track that information, and if there is something we need to do legislatively, maybe get it back to the board through one-on-ones, and we can have that discussion if there's something we need to be doing more. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Knowlton?
If I may, I recall, now this is going back to 2005, but I think it was part of the purchase and sale agreement that we had the right to go up to 10 MGD, but we had to show need and demand. So,
Well-
but I have those files too, so we can double check.
Yeah, and all those things can be changed legislatively, because that was 17 years ago, my math is, yeah, so we may need to update that or request a change. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Which would be, this is a good time to talk about it, because it's coming forward. Yes, sir.
Which if, if that's the case, then, I mean, I know it's not inexpensive, but it's going to be a lot less expensive to tap into that water than it is to try to buy more capacity at the Peace River facility after we pay for.
But we
That's
got,
the analysis
Yeah.
we need to have, though.
Yeah.
See, yeah, exactly.
but we got to get the water here, though.
Yeah, the transmission from that point
That's
is
the-
not cheap.
Right, but if we're talking a third of a share of $300 million versus 16 or $20 million, I think that's a lot less expensive.
The analysis needs to be done.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Dave?
So going over a few of our utility initiatives coming up. We are just starting our utility manpower audit. What this is doing is going to be looking at how we do things, the structure of the utility, are we staffed properly, and also looking at some metrics to look at how growth impacts our staff as well. Obviously, we're working with all the other departments on the county asset management philosophy. We're looking at mapping our business processes, getting them out so that they're very transparent, hopefully eventually getting them onto the website so that anything we do, a customer can come in and see it and without any question know where they are and what they have to do as far as a permit process or requesting service, things like that. We're working toward our APWA accreditation. A small group of us have been working on that for about 2 years now. That's expanding out through the utility at this point. Our goal is to make our application to APWA probably in the spring or late spring next year. So we'll be following in Public Works footsteps, hopefully. We're continuing with our CMOM program as part of the consent order. Our current program is working on the capacity assessment and assurance program. That is just starting up. That is going to be looking at new policies and procedures regarding our wastewater collection system, how we go about doing things, how we map things. Ken brought up about heat maps. We'll probably be getting into those with our SSOs, potentially tying into our pre-treatment program as well. So that's ongoing. And then our cooperative operator training program, we talked about that with Charlotte County VOTEC. And we'll be starting up our resiliency and modernization program probably before the end of the year or thereabouts. We have a consultant on board for that, so that'll be looking at that program and probably tying in to a certain extent to our asset management program. To give you an update, we do have several internship programs going on right now. We've got our summer internship, which is high school students. It's a 6-week program. We currently have 5 students participating in that. They started on June 13th, and they'll be finishing up on July 22nd. The program, basically, they rotate through all of our operating units, a couple of days, anywhere from, I think, 5 days to 8 days, depending. But they go through each one of our operating sections, treatment, wastewater collections, water distribution, reclaim and support, get a feel for all the different things that we do from the operational side. Our college internship program, we currently have 1 in engineering and 2 in operations. One of the operations is full-time in the lab. The other one is assisting with our project manager, doing inspections, assisting with paperwork, things along those lines. And that is it. Any questions?
Any more questions? Everybody good? Thank you, sir, very much.
All right, thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Good presentation. Again, appreciate your feedback and information. And you as well, sir. Thank you. And now we will go to our projects.
And can you
Sure.
book it for me?
Yep.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Ken Stecker, Utility Engineering, for the record. There are no really, no special slides that you'll notice different. So go ahead. So it's just, I broke this down a little bit, keep it a little more simple. Our engineering projects, the main processes are your planning, design, project, construction. And it just happened to work out. We're 65 at this point. When we made this slide, but the development projects, I just sitting in the car outside, got about 5 more. So we're probably, last 2 days, before I left, we got 11 in the last 2 days. So development is still going strong. Now, some of those are a 7-Eleven, some of them are a subdivision, but, right, now we'll get into the bigger projects, Eastport. So talking about SRF, this has been sent to the SRF representative. We sent it 2 weeks ago. It's 45 days that we need to have ahead of that August meeting. So that was, I think, June 26th was that magic number. So we sent all our package in for Eastport in conversations with our representative. He thinks that we're looking good for our 2 projects, but we still got to get listed. And he was, saying that cap will increase. He just doesn't know what it's going to increase to yet. As mentioned earlier, hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll know what that is. This is still planned to be finished with construction in 2025. Right. Burn Store, this is going to go to the SRF for the November meeting. We'll have to have that turned in by September to get that done. So we're finalizing design in the next couple months to get that all submitted. And this one will go through 2026 on the construction. Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
AWT?
Advanced water treatment.
Okay. Okay, so the original plant expansion design, I thought we were going to completely replace it. Isn't that the plan?
It is, yes.
Okay.
The short. I mean, there are some couple components that we are keeping in place, but for the most part, it is, a completely new replacement plant.
So we're going to take down the old 500,000 gallon a day and make a 2.5 million gallon a day. With what additional capacity could that be expanded to?
7.5.
Okay, thank you.
And then just to add to the design, because we talked about a lot of I&I today. The idea that we have is to get it from our system out of there as fast as we can to the plant. So we're building in some storage at the plant, extra storage, where we can take that extra I&I, put it in a 1.4 million gallon tank or a 1 million gallon tank for holding, and then it will filter it back through the treatment as the flow slows down through the plant. So it's really to take those increases, hold them so that we can run that plant as steady as possible to minimize chemical changes and minimize all that.
It's an above-ground ASR that actually works.
Yes.
Okay. So the other question, I guess, is then let's say you had 10,000 rooftops. How many million gallons a day do you need to service those 10,000 rooftops?
Oh, you're making me do math? It's 160 or 190 gallons per, or no, 225 is what we're required.
That's right.
Yep.
That sounds right.
25 what we're
was
required.
I think it's right.
So it's 225 per.
All right, so that's 2.25
Yeah.
million gallons a day. So we're there. That's good. I mean, because we're talking about approving 10,000 rooftops already. They've been approved for that corridor, and there's already a few thousand homes there. So we're good at 2.5 plus what you said we could expand to. That sounds good. Thank you.
US 41 commercial sewer. So we got those, our five areas. We've slightly adjusted this because we got a lot of developers coming in. So see areas 4 and 5 there. That's Westport, and I think the water park is 5. So, and on 5, we had our fire station go in right there. And so we do have the force main in for the fire station. So we're trying to work with the developers to make those connections to those commercials as simple as possible, gravity, and then get it to the developer's lift station that way. So we're trying to simplify the process a little bit. There was a developer came in for Area 3 that we've talked to as well. Area 1 and 2, we may still have to go with more of the grinder type situations. Those 1, 2, and 3 are being surveyed as we speak. The new contract was done for that, so we'll be moving forward with the designs on those. But we're trying to minimize costs as much as possible to everybody by working with the developers and tie them into their infrastructure as well. Any questions on that? I know that's a
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we compensating the developer for the upsize and lift stations?
if we are changing anything to more than what he needs, yes, we do need to compensate him for that.
So it sounds like we've done that. So you've oversized some of these developer lift stations in anticipation of the
It's
tie-ins.
such a minimal amount of flow, it may not need to be oversized.
Okay.
You know, with, I mean, we're talking 4 or 5 at this point, you know, commercial developments that have one bathroom in it or something. It may be that we just need to put in a new manhole that they just need to connect to.
So these lift stations are designed to county specs, and we're taking them over after they're complete and we approve?
Yes.
Okay, so there are lift stations at the end of the day. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Well, I'm glad we moved ahead with this. It seems like years ago we asked to put pockets of this commercial expansion in, and they're using it now. So years of, you know, pushing this thing, it's come in here, which we all know it was. So this is one of those things we can see the results of those decisions a while ago. And that one property 3, you said they're in the process of hooking up, or they're?
Well, there was a developer that came in that I think wants to do something on the backside. So they came in, so we talked to them about incorporating that 3 area as well. But that, we just had a preliminary discussion with them not that long.
Because I think there was a dance academy that wanted to hook in. Do you know if that was done?
I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know.
Commercial business there. They've been there for a while. I know they were wanting to get something done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Deep Creek, this one I got at 75% complete. That's mainly because there's still got a lot of restoration to do in the area. Pipe-wise, they're probably more 80, 85, but they're estimating they'll be complete in August. This is tied to our consent order, so we're keeping FTEP, you know, providing them information on how this project's going.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
notice you're right down the street from where I live, and just curious, you think they'll be pressure tested and ready to go by the end of August?
That is what I'm hearing
plan,
from
huh?
my project managers and as they're working with the contractor has had his difficulties on this
Yeah,
project,
I've noticed.
but I asked them to give me a date that they're confident with, and they gave me the end of August. So
Existing force main remaining in place, just abandon it? Is that what?
no, we're taking it out.
Okay.
We don't want to leave it in place. We don't like leaving lines in place. So
Okay, how are we getting rid of that? At the top, I live right near the top end.
yeah.
How are they forcing out of the existing pump station?
Well, what they should be doing, I haven't been out there in a while, but they're trying to replace as they move out. So as they're pulling the old force main out, they're installing new force main and then reconnecting every night.
Okay.
And then once they get it all in, they'll do an overall pressure test and everything. But that's how they're removing it. They're removing it as they go.
Okay, got it now. Interesting. Hope they get done on time.
You'll have a commissioner inspecting them.
Yes.
A
More
PE.
importantly, my wife drives by all the time.
Okay. That's what I meant. The commissioner's wife will be inspecting the work.
That guy's back again.
Yeah. Ackerman, this is the S2S project that's under construction. We've got zones 1 and 2 was already, designed and is under construction. Zones 3 and 4 is now design is complete and will be bid out for construction in next month. And what's still left to do, a little bit of design on the booster station, lift station, and the LPS zone. But they're getting close to the end of that. So we'll hope all the design will be done here shortly, and we'll be all in construction. And hopefully by mid-24, that project will be completed. And that, I believe, is with all the connections to the homes as well. Although I might come back and tell you something different. I'm not 100% sure on the connections to the houses. Lakeview Midway, this is the future S2S. This is in preliminary design. We just got the designer on board. So this is that area west of 41, north of, I think, Edgewater, in that area there. I think the difference in color is tied to the sewer master plan 5-year versus the 10-year delineation. I think what we do want to try and get all that done. But estimated start, assuming the MSBU and everything goes well, 23 within in 2026.
I thought the color difference, Mr. Chair, had to do with the type of system, no?
No, this should all be vacuum.
Vacuum, okay, thank you.
Casada Force Main, you guys amazing. We are finished with that. They're finishing up the restoration right now. They've paved the lift station area. And the picture we have there is what we pulled out of the ground.
Nice.
That is the bottom of that pipe.
Any forensic work yet to understand what caused that?
We're getting ready to do, I still got to get a contract out to do an investigation. I want to do an investigation kind of along, especially near, this was kind of close to the waterway. And we didn't see it as much as we got away from the waterway. So maybe as they dredge the waterway, they throw this soil next to it, and that had high pH or something. But yeah, we need to do an investigation because we do have this ductile iron pipe. It's about a 5-mile run to the plant, and
it's only what?
That is.
It couldn't be more than 25 years old, I don't think.
It's not, yeah, I think it's about 20.
Yeah, I kind of remember when it went in.
It's not. For ductile iron pipe, that's not old.
No.
So we have some soil, and that's coming from outside in on the corrosion. So we need to do a little investigation to figure out, make sure the rest of our pipes are in good. We haven't had any issues. This was the area where we had a couple of breaks, and obviously we had other stuff going on. But now we have PVC pipe all on the ground, and it's all been tested operational, and we're
How do you know it's not defective pipe?
It could, maybe we got a bad batch for in that area of DIP. I don't know, but I want to make sure. I want to do soil investigation and see if we have other areas, because this would not be an issue if we wrapped the DIP. But back then they didn't wrap the DIP with plastic.
What about HDPE? Is that also a material that'd be allowed in this?
HDPE?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, HDPE.
About fusion joints, weld the
It
joints?
doesn't have as long of life as PVC.
HDPE does not?
HDPE does not have.
It's inert,
It's
isn't it?
the lifespan of HDPE is like still 50, 75 years. PVC is 75 to 100 years. I mean, it's still a long lifespan, but
Okay.
that's the testing I've seen on HDPE. Thank you. Cochrane Reclaim Extension, this is just starting, so this will be very visible, just like for you guys. It is in a very congested corridor. Ships Excavating is a local contractor. I think they're out of Northport, or maybe what's starts with a V. Venice. Thank you. I think they might be out of Venice. Their construction is just kind of getting underway, and they're trying to get all the materials. SR 776, this is a replacement of the force main down S 776 by the sports park. This is an upgrade project we need to do to increase that 6-inch to larger pipe in order to get flow from West County into the new booster stations or the new lift stations. The notice to proceed has been given to contractor in April. He's having material issues, a little bit of delay. This is the same contract did Casada and did, if you remember, Easy Street was their first project. So we have a history with them, which is trying to get them going on that project.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you seeing some of your pricing start to stabilize on materials? Because petroleum is stabilized and actually starting to drop.
The contractors are figuring out how to deal with the new material issues. I don't know that we've seen we just saw that price drop, 2 days ago or whatever. So maybe we'll see some stabilization. I haven't heard personally, but we haven't seen a lot of contractors coming back with cost issues again in the last.
Okay, because with all those petroleum-based products that are being produced, it seems like petroleum, the barrels they stopped, they were spiraling upward, and then they kind of plateaued, and now they're, which I predicted, by the way, months ago. The arrow never goes straight up. There's a point where it levels off, settles out, shakes out, supply catches up with demand, and then next thing you know, you're going to be reading a few months from now that there's oversupply.
Remember, we got a lot of force majeure contract issues because of those prices going crazy. We're not hearing anything like that from the contractors anymore. So,
and I think we have some of our paving contracts indexed to the price of petroleum and other projects. So we may see some movement there as well, to the plus side for us. I mean, I know it's early, but
Don't hold your breath.
Well, I've been in the petroleum business for 30 years, so I follow the market carefully. I still do, even though I'm not in it anymore. So, you might start seeing over the next several months a recalibration of some of those things, yeah. We might.
Hopefully.
Unless something else in the world happens. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you. All right, now master plans. So water master plan, we've had a couple of their chapters brought in and a list of projects brought in. We've marked them up and sent them back. They're finishing that. We're expecting that by the end of July. I know I said completed here, but I didn't like what they sent us, so I sent it back to them. And so we gave them till the end of July. So we'll have that ready to, that's kind of why we pushed that presentation back to the next October meeting. Reclaim Water Master Plan, we have reviewed that. That's in place. That's sitting on Bruce Bullard's desk now to finish review, and we'll finalize that here in a little bit. We got to get, I did a initial review of it to make sure it kind of followed what we wanted it to do. And I got to get it to Bruce, and I have to still get it to Johnny. So he's sitting over there going, what? So I haven't gotten it to Johnny yet either.
Well, there's your good news.
And the sewer master plan, we're still negotiating that. So we do have a contractor on board. It's HDR Jones Edmonds. We're still negotiating that. So we are looking to look at the last sewer master plan. Technically, this is an update. The last sewer master plan focused mostly on the S2S and what we wanted to do with the S2S program. This will update that schedule, looking how we want to move S2S forward, but we'll also do more of an evaluation of our existing system and give us more of R&R needs and things to move forward with. And what's not on here, as Dave mentioned, we got a resiliency and modernization. That will be coming before you shortly. That is also being negotiated. That is also HDR and Jones Edmonds. So that is more of an overarching. So now we have a water master plan, we have a reclaim master plan, we'll have a sewer master plan, we have a SCADA master plan, we have water loss studies, we have CMOM. So we have a lot of these things out there, and we're going to try to use that resiliency to kind of identify some resiliency and modernization we can do, but also take all these into one plan and kind of organize how we want to move forward and bring in the asset management part of it as well. So with City Works coming on board and all that. So we're trying to use it, and it's all with a grant. This is all provided through a grant with HUD. So hopefully it'll all work out the way I have it in my head. So, all right, thank you. Upcoming projects, Westport, we're looking to upgrade that from 1.2 to, right now the CIP says 3, but we're looking to maybe do 5. Again, the selected was HDR Jones Edmonds. This is also going to have AWT construction. Actually, sooner than I thought. It's 24 through 26. After looking what Rick had, maybe that won't work out that way. We'll have to see how that schedule plans out. But this is also, part of this is working with the sewer master plan to determine if what Rotunda will be wrapped, all that flow will be wrapped into this, and what we need to do to expand that. Okay. And the South County upgrades, we've talked about this last time. With all the new developments coming in, we need an additional lift station, additional booster station, and to help with potential fire flow, increase in fire flows and everything in the area, elevated storage tank. We've had that elevated storage tank on the CIP for a while. Next board meeting or the next following board meeting, we're going to try and bring that up sooner than later. And these are just a number of other projects we're working on: R&R, booster station upgrades, lift station upgrades or replacements, subaqueous crossing over in Green Dolphin by Cape Hayes area, some reclaim expansion area down Loveland where some new developments coming, and then a lot of asbestos pipe removal type projects to help reduce some of that I&I. And I think that's it. No questions? Thank you, everybody. I scared 2 of them away.
I think you answered them all during the presentation, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the final presentation is on.
Is your mic? Agree.
Our final presentation is on the revisions to the sewer ordinance. These came about for 2 reasons. One is because our current ordinance was done 15 plus years ago, and the second is the state has passed some new legislature that affects the ordinance, so we needed to incorporate that new legislature into our ordinances for enforcement. So Julie from Hayes and Sawyer is going to take it from here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Julie Carlskent, Hazen and Sawyer. I'm here to present some of the revisions that we proposed for your wastewater collection system ordinance. I'll try to be quick. Just to give you an overview, I'll just provide a little bit of a background, how we came about it, major revisions that we have, and then just give you a short summary by division of those changes in the ordinance. Ordinance should be coming to you probably in the October-November time frame, somewhere around that there. A little bit of background. Initially, CCU retained Hazen and Sawyer, and with our teaming partner, which was Kimley Horn, to update their industrial pretreatment program. While we were doing our basic evaluation of it, we determined that the industrial pretreatment program had been in fact inactivated because there were no significant industries located in Charlotte County, and there still are not. So basically said, okay, how do you want us to handle this? And they said, well, you know what? Our ordinance hasn't been updated since 2001. Why don't we go ahead and just go through the entire ordinance, because there's changes in the rules coming, so we need to address those. So some of the things that we did was initially is we compared Charlotte County's ordinance with some of the other counties, and the main things we were looking for, because there have been recent rule changes, are fats, oils, and grease, protection of underground utilities, and also infiltration and inflow. And then we provided recommendations for updating that ordinance. Some of the major revisions that we have made to this ordinance include updating the definitions, deleting some of the information that's obsolete, so we got rid of that. We clarified various sections to make it a little bit easier to read. We're also prepared a new section to address infiltration inflow in anticipation of future requirements for the state rules and Senate bills. We're also updated the section for fats, oils, and grease to comply with recent requirements. And we basically, because the fees and fines were in the ordinance were still from 2001, so we basically took those out of the ordinance, and they will be indicate that they will be redressed by resolution, so that it'll be much easier for the county to make those changes. Okay, so I just was going to go through each one of the sections and just give you a brief overview of what major changes were done in these divisions. So in Division 1, basically, instead of it was initially called purpose and policy. A lot of the policy was already included later on in the ordinance. So basically, we just put purpose of what the ordinance is and just sort of simplified that. We went through all your definitions. We updated and deleted, added definitions, and also deleted some of the definitions. We also, for transported liquid waste regulations, we added what was considered as an acceptable waste. With building, sewers, and connections, we removed the discussion of infiltration inflow and actually came up with our own section on infiltration inflow, which can be later updated once the legislature ratifies what's going to be done with the state rules on I&I and how to address that, especially with private laterals. So some of the new definitions we added was acceptable waste. Authorized representative is now including the county, which initially was just talking about the industry who was ever representing that. We added definitions for infiltration, inflow, sanitary sewer overflow, and a wastewater discharge permit, which the county can now issue if they choose to, if they have an industry that they were concerned about. It may not meet the requirements for a significant industrial user, but if there are questions about it, then they can say, hey, you still need to submit a wastewater discharge permit. Under Vision 2, basically, we went through, we updated the national categorical pretreatment standards to add the dental office, which is EPA requires. We added specific pollutant limitations. We renamed that, and we also updated the tables with the maximum concentrations of what can be discharged by an industry into the sanitary sewer. And we also eliminated all the fines that were in that ordinance for maximum concentrations, and then that will be addressed by resolution. Division 3, basically, we took the requirements for fog, oil, and sand interceptors, and we moved that into Division 6. Division 4, basically, we updated the requirements for obtaining a wastewater permit for industrial discharges. We provided a 5-year permit for them, and also provided, as long as they say in good standing, and gave them a 180-day renewal time prior to renew their permit before expiration. Going through this real quickly, so you should appreciate that. Division 5, as I said, basically we've just taken the rates, fees, and charges and removed all that and said it's going to be taken care of by resolution. Division 6, basically this is with the fats, oils, and grease, so we just sort of updated all the requirements for fats, oils, and grease. We added a requirement that all regulated establishments must have a grease trap or interceptor in accordance with the Florida Building Code and county design standards. The old ordinance didn't even address grease traps, so we added grease traps in addition to interceptors. We established that all fees and fines and charges can be added to the monthly bill, so that'll make it a lot easier for the utility to track those. included requirements for oil and sand interceptors and permits to require replacement for the grease interceptor based on various conditions. Requires disposal by a licensed hauler. Included requirements for record keeping, and also required regulator establishments to implement best management practices.
Okay,
Yes.
if you hold right there, I've got Commissioner DeSalle in the queue with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, when this does get back to the board, I'm going to want a red line so I can understand exactly what we had and what the proposals are, so I can understand this better. Obviously, I don't need it today. It's coming back at the end of the year. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'd like it between now and then. On the grease trap interceptors, regulated establishments already required grease traps or interceptors.
Well, one of the things we added was a definition for regulated establishments. In the definitions, we didn't not even have a definition for that in the definitions, but it does require, like per building code, that you had to it said all the restaurants and things like that have to have yes, it does require that. So we just sort of updated it and said that they need to meet current standards and.
Okay, that's not the way I understood.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It sounded like you were now requiring it. They were already required.
They were already required. You're absolutely right.
Okay, I was a little confused. So there is some language in here. It's a bullet point. It says, permits county to require replacement or grease interceptor or trap based on various conditions.
Okay, so if the inspector comes
My question is, are the various conditions defined somewhere?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Okay, well,
Yes.
believing so and they exist are two different things.
You're absolutely right, and this is me just trying to make this real short and sweet for you, and I probably oversimplified it in that case.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure because that's pretty broad of a statement, and, there's a lot of businesses that paid to have grease traps put in, and they do get inspected, and they do get pumped. They're required to do that. It's the various conditions, meaning can an inspector just come out there and decide, I don't like this grease trap, you got to put in a new grease trap?
No, I think it's like, okay, so right now the way the ordinance is, and it's actually, you can use, if you built your building back in 1980 and you followed all the building codes and standards in 1980, and that's what you're required to put in at that time, you can still keep that. But when a guy comes out there, and there are measurements that's what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, but let's say this grease trap is like filled all the way to the very top. And it's like every time they check it, it's filled the way to the top, and stuff is overflowing. Then that allows them to tell them, hey, you need to update this, and you need to replace it and meet current building code requirements.
Or a solution is just to make your pump outs more frequent.
Do we have that in there? I thought we do. Okay.
Very good.
Yeah, so in this section here, it goes on to say, requires disposal by a licensed hauler. It already requires
It does.
that. It also says requires record keeping and quarterly reporting requirements.
And the county definitely has that too.
So I'm reading this going, wait a minute, it sounds like this is new, it introduces new changes and summary revisions. All this stuff already exists.
You're right, and what happened was when we moved it from one section to the other, I was looking at all the fresh new red lines, and so you have to understand it got moved from one section to the other, so some of the fresh red lines, I was just going, oh, here's all the fresh stuff, and then I was trying to summarize it for you.
Okay, because, that's why I started getting confused, because the way it was laid out is this is revisions to our code. And as I went through the slides prior to the meeting, I'm looking at this going, what are they revising? Most of the bullet points in here already exist. And I'm confused as to, is there something I'm missing? And that's when I said, well, I need to see a red line so I can see what's going on here.
We'll make sure you have that red line. But when I look at that, you're right. But when that got moved over, and when you see the red line, since it got moved over to 150, you'll see that was all new. But then you have to go back and you have to look at what's been crossed out, and a lot of that
Chair,
isn't
it
there.
helps when you've had to comply with these things for decades.
It does.
Well, I haven't had to, but I have installed.
Yes.
Subject to,
But
not personally installed.
we are trying, but it is important because that is what some of the new legislation is requiring, and that's part of CMOM, is to make sure that we comply with the fats, oils, and grease, because we have found that, a lot of the overflows have been caused by fog.
No, and this is big because it goes back to our wastewater treatment. If we're not capturing the grease and all the garbage, it ends up going to the plant, and we have to deal with it there. So yeah, this is important stuff. They have to be maintained, and things have to be done properly. But again, I'm glad for the clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So with respect to that, enforcement and remedies, basically, we revised the name just to enforcement. We took out all the administrative and judicial remedies, and we also referred all in violations basically to code enforcement. So we just simplified that significantly. We removed Division 8. Basically, it was affirmative defenses for discharge violations. We basically removed that. That's now more in code enforcement. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Anybody have any additional questions?
Any additional questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Yeah, he got in first.
Mr. Doherty?
Just curious, do we identify, well, I guess it's a question for Dave. These older systems, where we talk about the mains and I&I and so forth, are we able to monitor the laterals for these subdivisions, these neighborhoods? Because, people do strange things with their cleanouts, Yeah, up into the private property, and I'm just...
Is that a battery backup?
Sounds like it. Yeah, it's mine. Back on. Go ahead, sir.
I'm just curious as to how do we monitor that? When, how frequently do we go out and see? And I think in the Parkside area we did do some of that work. I'm just curious, some of the other older subdivisions where we may have I&I issues relative to laterals, not part of our mains, but up on private property, how do we identify that? Should we have a program where we identify if that's part of the culprit situation? And then if they are found that they've got a bad line up there, or they're doing something with cleanouts that are inappropriate, sometimes people's land is low, and they'll open their, I've heard the stories, they open in the older areas, they open the cleanouts just to drain their low area, their property, and put it down in our wastewater system. So do we have a mechanism in this ordinance, if we find somebody violating that significantly, can they be penalized?
So the piece of the ordinance that covers that is the inspection side.
Okay.
It does allow us to go onto private property to inspect the laterals.
If you're suspicious.
Yes. From the maintenance side, we do smoke testing.
Okay.
Where we know that there's a problem, our collections guys will go out, they will smoke test an area and identify areas or identify problems with laterals, cross connections, with downspouts, things like that.
This I&I issue creates a lot of extra flow into the plants. So if we just make sure we get our arms around it as best we can and what's reasonable, that sounds like a good thing. I forgot about the smoke testing.
And part of the CMOM program will bring all this together as far as creating a organized process for doing the inspections and R&R.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Sale.
Yeah, on the last two slides, enforcement and remedies and affirmative defenses to discharge violations. So can we even do that? We're referring everything to code enforcement, so somebody no longer has the right to an affirmative defense, and we're removing all administrative and judicial remedies? Is that even legal?
Most of that was put in with when they were requiring it for significant industrial users.
Get in front of the mic. Yeah.
I apologize. So most of that was incorporated as part of the industrial pretreatment program, which was for the insignificant industrial users. Now remember that the county currently does not have any significant industrial users, but anyone that does come, it requires a permit. As part of that permit that the county will issue to those significant industrial users, it should have all that information in that.
But these revisions don't just impact industrial users. Isn't this the whole code for everybody, generally speaking?
So there are certain pieces are specific to industrial users. As far as the laterals go, That is for residential properties as well as commercial, industrial, all of them, for inspections.
So are you telling me then Division 7 and Division 8 do not apply? They only apply to industrial users that are now being pulled from the program?
I don't have the answer to that.
Because I don't read it that way.
My take on it's no.
It's a waste, any provision of this article, a wastewater discharge permit or order issued here and under any other pretreatment standard requirement. So.
It's for everybody. Yeah, I mean,
Provision of this article.
yeah, we're going to need to look at that
We'll take another look at that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to circumvent somebody's rights to, exercise their rights in a through administrative or judicial remedies. I mean, we're essentially saying all violations now go through code enforcement. You have no other remedy, and I'm not sure about that.
So normally when we deal with code enforcement, it's because we've already requested a change or a modification and the applicant or owner has not complied. So our alternative is really code enforcement because that's got the ability to do that. The utility itself doesn't really have that ability.
But we're stripping away affirmative defenses. I mean, I
don't think we are, but I'd like her to.
I think by taking them out of the code, you're still not stripping away those rights. They still have those rights. You just don't have to tell them these are your defenses that you should be using. You still have the right to appeal a code enforcement decision to the courts. So that still remains.
All right, well, I'll wait for the documents. I'll go through them more closely when they're prepared in that red line. The other thing is, while we don't have any, or we have not used the IPP, who's to say we're not going to get industrial in the future?
This is addressed.
Where in this?
Yes, because under the permitting requirements, we still have limits for industrial users. We still provide that they have to submit for a wastewater discharge permit. And at that time, the county may have to reenact it, but it does address all industrial users and it does provide limits that industries that must comply with.
So one of the things that we wanted to ensure when we updated the ordinance was that we were prepared for an industrial user to come in. In the event we do get one, we are ready to move forward with the ordinance as opposed to trying to create an ordinance at that point.
Okay, because I was concerned you were stripping them out, and I'm like, well, yeah, maybe we haven't had any, but 10 years from now, you might get industrial user, and then we have to come back with a new ordinance if we strip them out of this.
And they still are included.
Okay.
It's just our program currently is just not active.
And I think you can condition their permits too.
Okay.
And we do require them to submit permits and meet limits and everything.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Good questions, though. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, we thank you very much, everybody, for your presentations.
Thank you.
I don't see comments on the agenda, but does anybody have any?
Yeah, I think it's on the back.
It doesn't say comments, it just has us listed. So, but if anybody has any, I'll go ahead and allow. Ms. Knowlton, anything? Okay. Stephen? Joe? Ken?
Well said.
I've got nothing. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.